Welcome to Twingineering. If you're feeling run down, it's probably time for a tune-up. Today is a gift. It's the way I approach every single day when I get up now. It's so important that we realize how fortunate we are as individuals, as human beings, as living entities in this reality. That we remind ourselves how fortunate we are to be here. A question I get asked a lot in the industry I'm in, and if this is your first time here, I am primarily in the fitness industry, although I don't just teach fitness. I've used this fitness platform as a way to also help my clients, my friends, and anyone else who I experience in this reality as a way to project to them other aspects of things that I've learned while being here. One of those things is happiness. This may resonate with some, others maybe not so much, but by the end of this, hopefully it'll make sense. There's no such thing as happiness. Happiness is an illusion. You're probably saying, then why are you smiling? When you come to the realization of things, a truth of sorts, smiling comes naturally. When you don't, I'll use the word understand, life is challenging. You see, when you come into this reality, you come into this reality already in a state of what you're calling happiness. Some of us call it innocence. When you're born into this construct, this reality, no one told you what you are. No one told you what you have to be. You just exist. In the beginning of things, we're babies. Small, unknowing beings. At least that's what we think. In reality, you're living souls, born into a reality you know not of. And it's at that moment when you realize that you are aware, conscious being, ability to see, smell, taste, touch, feel, that life begins here, not life begins from a starting point. You already are. As they say in many religions and belief systems, you come into existence as a living soul. You're not born dead. You already are. You just need to know how to exist in this new way of being. And in this reality, there are rules, there are restrictions, there are limitations, and those, in my opinion, are the beginnings of stress, anxiety, depression, whatever you choose to call them. But the truth of the matter is, all of these things are illusionary. I'm not telling you that whatever it is you may be feeling at this moment, you're not feeling, as in, you feel, as you're going to call it, depressed, down, based on whatever it is that's happening in your life. However, the truth of the matter is, you are choosing to feel that way. Some don't want to hear this, but it's the truth. You have more power than you realize. Today, my first client, I was talking to them about the ability or inability to realize what it means to play. There's a gentleman by the name of Alan Watts, Alanwatts, who I'm going to kind of paraphrase a little bit, said, "Man and woman takes too seriously what the gods made for fun." That couldn't be more true here in this reality. Now science is telling us we're living in a simulation, a game of sorts. And we've heard, at least I have, this life that we call, or this life that we're living, we've heard it called the game of life. But let's go back to when we were children. I remember the first time I moved to this area called Malton. At the time, my parents were living in Toronto, which, depending on where you are from or what place of the world you're in, Toronto is a city in a province named Ontario, and the province of Ontario is in a country called Canada, also known as North America. Anyways, my parents in the 70s decided they were going to move from Toronto to Malton because Malton was a new city, which is actually Mississauga, building, growing, and they thought it would be a great place to bring their family, which at that time I would have been about, well, let's see. Yeah, I'd have probably been around 9 years old, something like this. I was still a child anyway. Now, as a child, usually when you move to a new area, there's a certain element of fear. Not all children, but most children. The fear of where I'm moving, will there be other children? Will those children like me? Will I be able to make friends? Things like this. But at some point, you go outside, usually to a park or a school or something like this, and there are other children there. And depending on what kind of child you are, if you're anything like me, maybe you just watch it at first to see what the other children are doing. And if they're children like other children, they're playing. Now, depending on what they're playing, you may start to play with them, or you may sit back on the sidelines trying to figure out what they're playing. Back in the old days, a game that most children used to play was a game called tag. You might have 5, 6 or more children, large group, small group, whatever, and they're all running. And in tag, the rules of the game are you run all over the place and try not to get touched by whoever is called it. The it of the group is the individual that has to run and try to touch either one or more children. Depending on how the rules are lined out or laid out, let's say you have to touch 3 children. Once you've touched 3 children, you are no longer it. In which case, those 3 children are now it, and they have to touch other children in order to not become it. Usually it's just one person. Anyways, that's the way the game plays. So you're at the side watching this game, and of course you want to play, and either you're going to just invite yourself in, or more often than not, one of the children are going to look over and say, hey, and you're going to say, hey, what's your name? And then you're going to tell them your name, and they're going to tell you their names. And of course, they're going to ask you, would you like to play? Of course you're going to say yes, unless you're afraid. Now they're going to say, all right, here's how you play. We're going to run all over the place. Maybe we're going to even hide, and you have to touch us. And whoever you touch, they become it, and they play. Now they have to do the same thing you're doing, and on and on and on. And sometimes they may just play like this for the whole time, depending on the, let's just say, creativity of the person who's created the game, or they may add aspects to it. Maybe you got to touch with 2 hands. Maybe you have to hide and find a person and then touch them, or whatever. Why am I telling you this? When we're playing this game as children, there's no stress. There isn't. We don't know what stress is. There's no fear. There's just fun, laughter. Sometimes you fall over when you're playing the game. You may even get cut. But when you're playing at a high level, I'm fine. And you keep playing. You get home and you're all scuffed up and your parents are asking you what the heck happened to you. You're all dirty and stuff. You're not worried about none of that stuff when you're playing the game. You're just worried about having fun. And you're not even worrying. You're having fun. You don't even care if you touch anyone. All you're concerned about is having fun, making friends, laughing, rinse and repeat. But as you get older, the game changes. The game becomes more, let's just say, immersive. And what ends up happening is your reason for playing changes. You see, when you're a child, there's only one thing you want to do, and that's have fun. Have fun. Have fun to the point where your parents got to come out and get you. Do you know what time it is? Come on inside. I don't want to, I'm having fun. And you can't wait for the next day to start so you can go have fun again. But as you get older, somewhere along the line, we forgot how to play the game. Now we're not playing for fun. We're playing because we want to make money, or we want status, or we want power, or we want to have control, or we want materialism, or a combination of those things. And once we stop having fun, the game changes and we change, and we're not children anymore. We're something else. And then we become sad and stressed and depressed and anxious and all these other things that have nothing to do with having fun. And then we start worrying about life. That thing that motivates us, that no longer motivates us, now it's become something else. Then we become jealous, because there are those of us who still play the game of life to have fun. And as a result, we don't have stress. We're not anxious. We're not depressed. And those of us who have stopped playing the game this way